What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project back again. It's about 3 in the morning. I really wanted to plan to do this later on today, however, but I'm taking care of a sick 8-year-old right now. So if I end up somewhat rambling in any of these cases, you can leave a comment down below. Do whatever you like. But anyways, thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to be covering 10 cold cases from the year of 1974, as I got a request from one of my subscribers for a dive into cases of the 1970s. Thank you all so much for coming back. Like I said, I'm very happy to be back. YouTube jail is not a fun place, but at the same time, I love making these videos, and even if they want my channel to move away from the AI, I will continue to do this. As I haven't really said this, but definitely going through a very rough part of my life right now, but rebounding and just doing what I can, and this is definitely one of the spots that I love doing and love communicating with all of you as well too. So let's get started. We are going to be covering 1974, as I previously said. Now, a couple of these cases you could respond to me and say that they are solved because they are linked to Ted Bundy. Now, this is true. He did admit to the cases of both Georgeanne Hawkins and Donna Manson that he did kill both of these girls. However, bodies have never been found. There's never been a 100% match for them. So I am going to keep these girls in this video out of respect for the fact that these young ladies with so much potential vanished at the hands of a brutal monster. Now, all that long-winded talk going, let's get started now. Our first case for today is going to be Georgeanne Hawkins. Now, she was a student at the University of Washington in 1974 and a member of the Kappa Alpha Theta and on-campus sorority. She walked to her boyfriend's dorm room on the night of June the 10th, 1974. His residence was 6 homes down from Hawkins' sorority house. Now, her roommate became very concerned when Georgeanne didn't return to their home by 2 a.m. the following morning and called Georgeanne's boyfriend. Now, he said that she left his residence approximately an hour earlier, which would have put it sometime around 1 a.m. The police were called about a little later on that morning when there was still no sign of Hawkins. Immediate action, like I said, while taking it, since young girls had been disappearing from the area at the time. Now, a campus house mother reported hearing a scream around the time Hawkins left her boyfriend's room in the early morning hours of June the 11th. She initially believed it was due to the students playing a joke and went back to sleep. Now, once again, Georgeanne has never been seen or heard from again. Now, prior to his execution in 1989, Ted Bundy confessed to Georgeanne's murder. He made his claim to Robert Keppel, one of the investigators of the Unsolved Crimes Unit in Washington, who was very involved in both Ted Bundy and the Green River Killer search. Bundy claimed that he saw Hawkins behind her sorority house during the early morning hours of June the 11th, 1974. He said that he asked her for assistance with his briefcase, as Bundy often would wear a fake cast on his arm to try to convince his poor, nice, naive young victims to come along and give him a hand. Hawkins agreed to assist Bundy, at which point he hit her over the head with a crowbar, which knocked her unconscious. He then pulled her into his vehicle and drove off. Bundy said that Hawkins awoke during the drive, and he then knocked her unconscious one more time before he strangled her to death. Bundy claimed that one of Hawkins' bones had been discovered on September the 6th, 1974, about 2 miles from Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. He stated that her remains were never identified. Other victims of Ted Bundy were found in this same area. His statement has never been confirmed, and as I mentioned earlier, the body of Georgeanne Hawkins to this day has never been found, which is the reason I am putting her in this list. In the mid-1970s, Alice Jefferson vanished under mysterious circumstances from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. At the time, she resided on a military base with her husband, Lee Andrew Jefferson, a serving soldier, and their 2 young children. Despite leaving behind personal belongings, including her car and clothing, there's been no trace of her since. At the time of her disappearance, Alice's children, ages 5 and 6, were left bewildered when they returned from school to find no one home. Eventually, they made their way back alone, only to be greeted by a distressed Lee, who claimed that he had been sleeping. With Alice nowhere to be found, Lee kept the children from entering their own bedroom and insisted they stay with him instead. Shortly afterward, he relocated the children to their grandparents' house in Arkansas and severed all ties. Despite Lee's claims of having reported Alice missing and her parents' attempts to do the same, it wasn't until 4 decades later, in 2013, that an official missing persons report had been filed. The children, now adults, suspect foul play at the hands of their stepfather, though Lee has not been charged and maintains that Alice left of her own accord. Alice's family, spread across several states, continues to seek answers in her disappearance.
Larry Morris was last seen in Riverton, Wyoming on April 26, 1974. He is from Tulsa, Oklahoma, but was employed in Riverton at the time of his disappearance as a seismograph worker. He planned to go to Yellowstone National Park before returning to Oklahoma, but apparently never arrived in either place. Morris's green 1966 Ford LTD pickup truck with the Oklahoma license plate number RO94 disappeared with him. It was later found abandoned in California. James Franklin Jagers and Jack Lincoln were arrested with Morris's credit cards and other personal items belonging to him. Jagers was released from prison in Colorado in March 1974. Lincoln was his former cellmate and escaped from jail in April of that year, 2 days before Morris disappeared. Morris's credit card was used by someone other than him on multiple occasions in Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, and California, starting on April 27th. Witnesses stated 2 men were using the card and signed the receipts with Morris's name. Jagers and Lincoln left Morris's pickup truck in a repair shop on April 30th and rented another vehicle. They were arrested in Idaho on May 8th and were found carrying Morris's credit cards and driving the car they'd rented in his name. Authorities found Lincoln's fingerprints on the credit card receipts and inside Morris's truck. In 1983, while incarcerated, he offered information about Morris's case in exchange for transfer to a different facility. He stated Morris was dead and he knew where the body was buried. The possible deal went nowhere, however. In April 2013, authorities charged Jagers with auto theft and grand larceny in connection with the theft of Morris's car. The charges were reduced to petty larceny in August, however, and Jagers was released immediately with credit for time served. He died in 2014 without having ever been charged in connection with Morris's disappearance. Morris has never been found. There were no signs of foul play at his home in Riverton. His case remains unsolved and is being treated as a homicide.
Margaret Fox mysteriously disappeared in Burlington, New Jersey on June the 24th, 1974, while on her way to a babysitting job interview in Mount Holly, New Jersey, with an individual named John Marshall. Margaret's journey began with her little sister seeing her off on a bus. Later, she was seen near Mill and High Streets in Mount Holly, but that was the last time she'd ever been seen alive. The opportunity arose from an ad Margaret placed seeking a babysitting position, which Marshall answered on June the 19th. After several postponements, he arranged to meet Margaret and mentioned arriving in a red Volkswagen, providing a phone number that led back to a payphone in Lumberton, New Jersey. Following Margaret's disappearance, her family received a chilling phone call recorded by the police from a man demanding $10,000 for her return, stating $10,000 might be a lot of bread, but your daughter's life is the buttered topping. The identity of this caller remains a mystery. Margaret's disappearance remains unsolved, with John Marshall never having been identified. The case was further complicated by false confessions and reports of similar deceptive job offers in the area. Margaret, a recent graduate of St. Paul's Grammar School and an enthusiast of the piano and horseback riding, left behind a grieving family. Her parents have since passed away, but her siblings continue to seek closure in Burlington. Elbeth Lermeyer's life took a tragic turn on the evening of Wednesday, March 6, 1974. She planned to spend the evening baking bread at her Sioux Falls, South Dakota home. Having separated from her husband, Gene Lermeyer, the year prior, Elbeth, aged 25, had recently started dating Jerry Thomas, a fellow Sioux Falls resident. However, on that fateful evening, Jerry's out-of-town business trip prevented their usual meetup. Despite his repeated attempts to reach out to her via phone, Elbeth never answered. Concern reached a height when Elbeth failed to show up for work the next morning, a huge deviation from her typical punctual and responsible demeanor. As a social worker at the Community Services Office in Sioux Falls, Elbeth was renowned for her dedication and compassion towards her clients. Her suddenly not showing up sparked immediate alarms amongst her colleagues. With no leads or information from family members, authorities swiftly launched into their investigation, which started at Elbeth's home. Now, despite finding the residence securely locked and her car being parked in its normal spot, signs of her immediate departure were definitely evident in the home, as authorities walked in to find a partially eaten pizza, an unbaked loaf of bread, and scattered flour, hinting that at some point in her evening it was ended abruptly, yet provided no clues as to what happened or where she was. From the onset, detectives suspected foul play in Elbeth's disappearance, initiating for public appeals for information and urging rural property owners to assist in the search. Colleagues at the Community Services Office rallied behind Elbeth, establishing a reward for any leads in her case, though responses were disappointingly scarce. Meanwhile, her parents, Leslie and Mildred Keller, issued heartfelt pleas through local media, trying and begging for any leads or any help anyone could give them in trying to find their daughter. While the community responded to help, once again, leads just really weren't coming out at this time. Now, months of the investigation yielded few breakthroughs until October the 10th of 1974, when 3 of Elbeth's credit cards surfaced at the Dauphin train station in Manitoba, Canada. However, authorities dismissed the possibility of her being in Canada and really viewed this as more of a deliberate diversion tactic. Despite exhaustive efforts, including shifting the case to a homicide, from this point the case grew cold, leaving Elbeth's fate unresolved. Now, suspicion lingered around Gene Lermeyer, Elbeth's estranged husband, particularly given the allegations of abuse and the timing of her disappearance, being that at the same time their divorce trial was still ongoing. Now, with her vanishing, Jean was cleared of involvement. However, Jean faced ongoing scrutiny from law enforcement, accumulating in legal battles and subsequent criminal charges unrelated to Elbeth's case. Years went on without closure, with reviews from the investigation yielding no new leads. Elbeth's family, troubled by really not getting the answers they wanted, as well as Jerry Thomas, really went on the rest of their lives feeling the weight of her disappearance and would never forget what they endured. And even though Jerry would move on with his life, he said that for the rest of his life, he's going to want to figure out what happened to Elbeth that night. Elbeth Lermeyer's disappearance remains a haunting mystery that stayed in the hearts of her loved ones. Her case remains unsolved. Amy Billig entered the world on a crisp January 9th in 1957 amidst the serene backdrop of Coconut Grove, Miami, Florida. This neighborhood epitomized the southern charm with its bright sun swaying palm trees, an endless expanse of the ocean painting a picture of carefree bliss. However, beneath the picturesque facade lurked the lurking shadows of danger, a reality that would soon grip the Billig family in its clutches. Fast forward to March the 5th, 1974, seemingly ordinary day for 17-year-old Amy as she strolled home from school, her mind buzzing with plans to meet friends after a quick snack. A routine call to her father for a little bit of pocket money set her in motion in a chain of events that would shatter the tranquility of their lives. Little did Amy know her decision to hitch a ride to her father's work would lead her into the jaws of danger. As night came upon him, Amy failed to return home, sparking panic within her family. Hours turned into agonizing days as night wore on. It was evident that Amy was nowhere to be found. Her parents' frantic search yielded no clues, leaving them gripped with a sense of helplessness and fear. Those days would go into weeks. Still, Amy's absence loomed large. Then, a glimmer of hope emerged when two teenage boys, Charles and Larry Glasser, claimed responsibility for Amy's disappearance, demanding a hefty ransom. However, their deceit quickly was uncovered, revealing them to be opportunistic criminals seeking to exploit the Billig family's anguish. Amidst the chaos, Susan, Amy's mother, received a chilling phone call from an unknown man claiming Amy had become his slave. Despite efforts to trace the phone call, the man remained elusive, leaving Susan to grapple with the haunting uncertainty of her daughter's fate. As the investigation continued, Amy's camera was discovered near a Florida highway. Its contents offered little in the way of clues. Undeterred, Susan launched into her own investigation, driven by a mother's love and determination to find the truth. 12 days after Amy's disappearance, a startling revelation emerged. She may have been kidnapped by the notorious biker gang known as the Outlaws. Susan delved deeper into this lead, uncovering chilling tales of young girls sold into slavery by gang members. Despite her relentless efforts, Susan's search yielded few results. Months turned into years, and still Amy's whereabouts remained a mystery. Then, in 1976, a biker named Dave claimed knowledge of Amy's location, igniting a glimmer of hope in Susan's heart. Yet the meeting in Tulsa proved fruitless, leaving Susan to confront yet another dead end in her quest for answers. Despite setbacks, Susan kept on. Her determination wouldn't stop in the face of the odds. In 1995, a breakthrough came when Susan received a phone call from an unknown man claiming Amy was in Reno. Despite efforts to locate her, Amy remained missing, leaving Susan to confront the harsh reality of yet one more false lead. In 1997, an ex-member of the outlaw gang allegedly confessed to Amy's murder at his deathbed, but his claims were met with skepticism, leaving Susan with even more unanswered questions. Amidst the turmoil, Susan endured relentless harassment from a man claiming to have enslaved Amy. His calls served as a cruel reminder of her daughter's plight. In 2005, Susan passed away. Her tireless effort will remain to really just try to find the answers to what happened to young Amy that day. Now, as time has gone on, this case has remained in really true crime folklore as to what really happened to Amy Billig that day. The popular story that's kind of come over the years is that she was kidnapped by the local biker gang. And at a party that night, she more than likely overdosed and was at this point taken somewhere where she was fed off to alligators or some other form of wildlife. However, this, like many other true crime stories we've all watched and learned of, is just another case of a whole lot of unanswered questions and a whole lot of possibly gruesome answers. Now, with all that said, Amy's case to this day remains unsolved. Vicky Lamberton, a grad student pursuing a master's degree in psychology at Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts, found herself in a hectic year in 1974. Having previously earned her undergrad degree from Clark University, Lamberton's life took a dramatic turn as her marriage encountered difficulties, leading to separation from her husband that February. Amidst these tumultuous circumstances, Lamberton relocated from the residence she shared with one of her brothers, opting to store the majority of her personal belongings in a garage belonging to her psych professor, Dr. Roger Barker. Dr. Barker, a supportive figure in Lamberton's life, aided her in the moving process and even accompanied her to New York as she pursued her aspirations of becoming a psychology doctor at Columbia University. Previously, rumors swirled regarding Lamberton's relationship with Dr. Barker. Fueled by suspicions harbored by Lamberton's husband and brother, they claimed to have seen Lamberton and Dr. Barker together at a local shopping mall prior to her disappearance in February. The mystery deepened when Lamberton's husband, alarmed by her prolonged absence, discovered discrepancies in her weekend plans. Lamberton had allegedly spoken with him about the possibility of reconciliation and mentioned a weekend trip to Maine with a friend. However, subsequent investigations revealed no such trip had taken place, prompting grave concern for Lamberton's well-being. Speculation mounted. Attention turned to Dr. Barker, who reportedly was out of town in Vail, Colorado, recuperating from pneumonia. Lamberton's husband suspected she might be with Dr. Barker, but investigations yielded no evidence supporting this theory. Despite efforts to uncover the truth, including retrieving Lamberton's belongings from Dr. Barker's garage and revisiting the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, answers remained elusive. Lamberton's family grappled with conflicting accounts and the possibility of her voluntary departure, given her previous discussions about starting a new life. Years passed with no signs of Lamberton, prompting her family to file a missing persons report in 2010, a staggering 36 years after her disappearance. Yet, even with renewed attention to her case, her whereabouts remained unknown. The mystery of Lamberton's vanishing has left local authorities still searching for answers, as the case does remain open. However, with the time lapse that's come since, odds are very likely we're going to get the answers to what happened in this troubling case. Anna Price disappeared at approximately 8:45 p.m. on May the 30th, 1974. She left her apartment on 4th Street from her place of employment, the Flamingo Club in Benwood, West Virginia. She was driving her boyfriend's green four-door early 70s model AMC Gremlin. Price never arrived at work and has never been seen or heard from again. The vehicle was found the following morning along State Route 2 at 12th Street in McMeekin, West Virginia, just north of Moundsville, West Virginia. Price's wallet and purse were inside the car, and her makeup was spread out over the front seat. Route 2 is the major north-south route along the Ohio River between Moundsville and Wheeling, West Virginia. Now, Price's disappearance went unreported for 3 days, and the 1974 police investigation is information that they have right now is very scarce. Officers never looked at her car. For example, the case was reopened in 2009. An anonymous informant told police that Price was shot to death with a small caliber handgun and buried beneath a telephone pole. The story, however, was never confirmed. At the time of her disappearance, Price was going through a contentious divorce and custody battle for her 2 young children, but her ex-husband was investigated thoroughly, and authorities couldn't find any evidence to link him to her disappearance. She was born in New Jersey and moved to West Virginia after her father died when she was 4. Since 1974, she hasn't held a job or been arrested, and there's been no activity on her Social Security number. Her loved ones described her as an outgoing, family-oriented woman who would have never abandoned her children. Foul play is suspected in Price's disappearance, and her case remains unsolved. Donna Manson, a student from Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, vanished without a trace in 1974 and has not been seen or heard from since. Her disappearance wasn't reported for 6 days due to her habit of hitchhiking and occasionally vanishing for days. Her friends really just initially thought that she just took an unplanned vacation. Now, the year's 1974, and we're in the state of Washington, so as we all know, there was a man in the area by the name of Ted Bundy. Now, it's worth noting that Ted Bundy confessed to Donna Manson's murder prior to his execution in 1989. He alleged that parts of her skeleton were found on Taylor Mountain, Washington, in March of 1975, though they were not identified at the time. Now, Bundy's claims regarding Manson have never been 100% confirmed, however. In a separate discovery, 2 fishermen stumbled upon a human skull near Highway 7, southwest of Eatonville, Washington, in August of 1978, an area close to Mount Rainier's foothills. Further searches revealed more bones, hair, and clothing, including a multicolored shirt similar to what Manson was last seen wearing in 1974. It was speculated that her remains had been placed there after her disappearance. Despite some initial investigations, there was no formal comparison between Manson's records and the unidentified remains found near Eatonville. Over time, vital records, including x-rays and other forensic evidence related to the case, vanished from the Pierce County files, further adding to the mystery. In 1978, a forensic dentist ruled out 7 missing persons as matches for the Eatonville remains, leaving Manson as the only potential match. Unfortunately, the skeleton was later destroyed, and additional remains were either disposed of in a landfill or misplaced due to administrative errors during the property room merges. The case saw a brief resurgence in the 1990s when the loss of crucial documents and remains came to light. But no further evidence has ever been found. Now, unfortunately, Donna Manson to this day remains missing. Her case remains unsolved despite Ted Bundy saying this was one of his victims. Ted Bundy also said he killed hundreds of other women. So, lo and behold, this case remains unsolved. Joseph Martin vanished from Newburgh, New York under mysterious circumstances. His last known location was the 300 block of South William Street, likely in early of January 1974. Martin's vanishing was marked by a ride to a local Dunkin' Donuts on Broadway, from where he intended to hitchhike. Though he did not disclose what his destination was or the identity of the person who went with him, since then, Martin has made no contact with his family. A Newburgh native, Martin was brought up in a local Catholic education system but left school during his 10th grade year. His military service took him to Germany for 2 years with the U.S. Army, where he engaged in a serious relationship that nearly led to marriage. However, the relationship ended, and Martin came back to the U.S., briefly living with his mother before moving in with his grandmother on Oak Street. His past includes a minor run-in with the law in 1972 for petty theft in Ulster County. At the time of his disappearance, Martin's mother was hospitalized for a heart attack, leading to speculation that the stress from her not feeling well might have prompted his potentially trying to take his own life. Notably, there's been no activity on his social security number since 1972, fueling to theories Martin might have relocated to Germany. His absence thus eluding official documentation in the U.S. Efforts to trace Martin's father, who separated from his mother during Martin's childhood, have been fruitless. The lack of concrete evidence and passage of time have left Martin's fate unresolved. His case is still open and shrouded in mystery. Margaret Dash vanished on June 14, 1974, after leaving her Clearwater, Florida home on Wildwood Street to purchase medicine for a relative. Despite never being seen again, her disappearance only came to the attention of authorities when her husband reported her missing the following day. He was later cleared as a suspect following passing a polygraph test. The day she went missing, Dash was driving her daughter's white 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass, distinguished by its missing left front hubcap, which was later found deserted on in a St. Petersburg parking lot. Remarkably, Dash left an untouched sum of $8,000 in her bank account. Investigations into Dash's disappearance reveal a possible connection to Cleveland Hill Jr., a former minister at Dash's family church and an asphalt contractor, with whom Dash and 2 other missing women, Danielle Johnson and Retha Hears, were romantically involved. Despite Hill's confession and apology for the affair to Dash's husband, the relationship continued until Dash attempted to end it, leading to Hill allegedly threatening her life. Hill's violent history includes a 1968 incident where he shot his wife and mother-in-law, both whom survived the attack. Despite a minimal sentence for assault and a brief prison term for violating probation, Hill's wife remarried him, influenced by their church's stance against divorce. Years later, Hill's wife recounted a menacing warning from him, hinting at his capability to make people disappear. In 1992, Hill faced conviction for drug trafficking and was released in 2008, only to die from cancer in Virginia in 2018. Throughout his life, he denied any involvement in the disappearances of the three missing ladies, which remain unsolved to this day, with no evidence linking the women other than their affiliation with Hill. Foul play is suspected in all three cases. Joseph Spac vanished without a trace on a chilly January day in 1974, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the streets of Hammond, Indiana. On that fateful morning, Joseph embarked on his routine paper route, delivering copies of the Hammond Times to its subscribers before leaving the newspaper bag on his front porch. Following his usual routine, he would then head to the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church for Mass, just a short distance from his home on McCook Avenue. However, as the day went on, Joseph failed to return home after lunch, prompting his parents to grow increasingly worried. After contacting one of his friends who reported seeing Joseph playing near Morton School, his parents' concerns deepened. That evening brought aside fear as Joseph was absent for dinner, prompting his parents to contact the local authorities. Witnesses came forward to having seen Joseph playing in various locations around the town, near the Catholic Cemetery on Kennedy Avenue, and by Norfolk and Western Railroad tracks, while others thought they saw him near the Hessville Cemetery at 169th in Arizona. Despite these reported sightings, Joseph remained missing. The Spac family vehemently denied the possibility Joseph would want to run away, saying the fact that he was happy at home. Not to mention, he left behind all of his possessions, from his clothing to his second pair of glasses to his Matchbox cars and baseball mitt. And like myself, one of our most prized possessions when you're a young kid are your baseball card collections. To this day, I still have my collection, so I can definitely understand how you'd think, what would happen if he'd leave all his most prized possessions behind? Authorities pondered the unsettling notion of abduction, but the circumstances surrounding Joseph's disappearance were so unclear, and especially in this era, authorities often thought runaway as opposed to a possible abduction back then. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no evidence emerged to shed light as to what was Joseph's fate. Decades later, the mystery of Joseph Spac's disappearance continued to haunt the area of Hammond, Indiana, as decades have gone by and his case remains unsolved.